Georgia goes down to Lexington, or goes over or up to Lexington, I should say, and is in an outright dogfight. I think this being the premier game of the night, tons of people were tuned in. A lot of people thought that this was going to be a blowout because Kentucky loses to South Carolina, who we just got done talking about, but loses to South Carolina and got dominated by South Carolina. But they're in a dogfight with Georgia all throughout the game. When you look at this game, what were your thoughts?
For everyone sounding the alarm that loves to overreact to these games, that did this for Oregon, for Alabama, for all these games, can we take a quick second to remember what happened last year? Georgia played badly against South Carolina and still won. They played really badly against Auburn and still won. They have Kirby Smart, in his time at Georgia, has had these dud games where they have just played really poorly on offense. And injuries popped up.
Missouri in 22, if you remember.
Yes. Injuries pop up. And then the opponent attacks those injuries. Tate Ratledge goes down in the beginning of the game. You're already without Michael Williams. Those areas were attacked by Kentucky successfully. But they still managed to, on any day, and this kind of goes with what we talked about with LSU, great football teams find ways to win when they're playing bad. I've said that last year a million times. I will say it a million times until I die. Good, great, not good. Great football teams find ways to win when they're playing poorly. And that's what they did. They did not play as good as we expected going into that game. They were far better, significantly better than Kentucky, but they just played a really sloppy football game, especially on offense. I don't think that anyone needs to react to this, and it's really stupid to me that they're getting dinged for it in rankings. They should not. They absolutely should not.
I'm not going to get to the rankings part because, like I could say Texas being the number one team in the AP poll. Oh well, they look more impressive than what Georgia has done so far. Well, listen, you have a backup court. Well, look, we're going to find out in 2 weeks. That's all I'll just say. We're going to find out in 2 weeks who the real number one team in the country is.
Right.
Joe, I think offensively they got to start finding some playmakers, though. I think that they're trying to spread the ball around a little too much and not feeding the hot hand. Let me explain. Dominic Lovett had 6 catches, 89 yards, and he had a massive one-hand catch, okay, in this game. And I'm like, Dominic Lovett is going off. And they're trying to continue to bang their heads into a wall, get the ball to the tight end, run the football. Kentucky had zero answer for Dominic Lovett, zero. And I know for Georgia, Joe, we get to a place where, oh, well, this guy's got 6 catches, 89 yards. He's having a good game. Yes, they're going to have to find their identity with these skill players and at running back. I think that Etienne at the end of the game, Joe, giving him the rock at the end there of the game, Robinson scores, but Etienne was the one that really led them down to get that touchdown to win them the football game. The bottom line for me is Bobo's going to have to start, Mike Bobo Dorsey, is going to have to start force-feeding guys that are getting hot like Dominic Lovett. Where's Humphrey? Like, where are some of these guys that you need to be playmakers? And, Joe, when you're struggling, look, I know that Carson Beck had a rough game. And he did. Joe, he was 5 for 11 in the first half with, I think, 27 yards. I mean, like, that is abysmal on what we come to expect from Carson Beck. They're going to have – this is not like – if Georgia wants to do what Georgia wants to do and what they're perceived of, what I perceive them to be as my national champion going into the preseason, I'm pretty sure was your national champion going into the preseason, they have an issue offensively. I think Dominic Lovett, from what he's shown, along with Bell at times, has shown that they can be playmakers. I know that they want to establish the run game. They want to run the football. I know Beck was off early. But, Joe, when you see a guy like Dominic Loving going off, why are you getting away from him? That would be the thing that I think that really gets me. Also, third down offensively. Joe, I feel like with Georgia in this game specifically, and in the first half versus Clemson when that game was really tight, I'm asking myself, do you have an idea or an identity on third down on what you want to do on third and short? because I feel like you have a good running back, you have a good offensive line, but sometimes you're trying to be cute. Sometimes you got to line up and just run the football. And I feel like that they don't. I feel like they're still trying to find their way out offensively. However, with all of that being said, my God, that defense is good.
Well, I tweeted that out that what's always consistent is that when the offense is off and you need the momentum to shift back in your hand, that defense will make a play.
I don't give two Rudy Poos that it was Kentucky. Okay? They look fantastic. Now, I'm going to say this, something that I would bring up. Vandegrift had 13 carries for 26 yards, but the sacks get included in that. Joe, he had 8 scrambles. 8. You want to know how many yards he had on those scrambles? 60.
I mean, you can't be giving that up, especially when you have to deal with Milroe, and Quinn Ewers is a good athlete as well. Or if it's Arch starting, he's a good athlete
I'd be more worried about Arch Manning than Quinn Ewers with an ab strain.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I want to address though what you're talking about here with Georgia offensively, because it felt like they were slamming their head against a wall. Mike Bobo was trying to get this run game going. They had more rushing attempts in this game than they did passing attempts. 30 compared to the 24, 3.4 yards per carry. That is what ultimately is Kentucky's strong suit, is their defensive line, their linebackers. That was where they're the most stout. I don't understand why there was this overemphasis on trying to run the football. I know that you want to be able to establish things on the ground, and you want to open things up. It felt like Carson Beck couldn't get into a rhythm because they weren't giving him the chances to. It felt like there were a lot of times where there were extended stick situations where it wasn't 3rd and short or 3rd and medium. It just felt out of sync. You can't allow and expect the guy to get into a rhythm when you're throwing the ball only 24 times in a game. And you got dominated in time of possession.
Let me rudely interrupt you. He's 5 for 11 and a half for 27 yards.
That's not enough passing attempts, though, to get into a rhythm, I feel like.
11's not enough?
Against a really good defense. That is a very, very good defense that, I don't want to hear anyone poo-poo it. It's a very, very good defense.
Think about this. Carson Beck had more incompletions in the first half than Lenora Sellers did the entire game the week before.
Some guys aren't hot for every single game. It takes a little bit of time.
That is very fair. I'll agree with you on this in reference to what you're saying. Look, it's just my opinion. I think that they need to start forcing love at the football to some extent. I mean, Joe, how can you not watch that game and say, oh, dude, this kid's going off? Like, Joe, am I wrong? I mean,
I think you're right. But I think a simpler version of that is, why aren't you taking more chances downfield? Why aren't you throwing the football more when that was what was working?
That's fair. That
could have been working.
Joe, let me ask you this. Sumo, our Demi, had 98 yards rushing. Were you alarmed by any of the rushing attack from Kentucky getting on Georgia in this one? Because, look, 22 carries, 98 yards. It's not the only thing. Wilcox also had 9 for 43. So the two running backs, when they struggled at times last week offensively, they still lined it up and ran it on Georgia.
I'm not worried about that, because as we talked about here, they're dealing with some injuries on defense, especially Michael Williams. You're without Michael Williams, who's arguably your best defensive lineman. On top of that, I think that the way that they were coming at them and the fact that they won the time of possession for how much the defense was on the field, like, that started to add up in the second half. Like, you could kind of start to see that they were getting a little bit tired and that they were having to play so much. That stuff really weighs down a defense, no matter how good they are. They managed to get the stops when they needed them, but those things show up. So I'm not really worried about it. I don't think that's indicative of who they are as a team.
But even to add to that, Vandegrift had 8 scrambles for 60 yards. Okay.
Yeah, they gotta be.
So you have 60. So the way that I look at it is, okay, so let's not even look at stats. Joe, Vandegrift completed a lot of third downs and got a lot of first downs with his legs. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, the kid was like, listen, if it's not there, screw it. I'm taking off. And I thought it benefited them a lot of different times. But you have him having a net yardage of 60. You have him or Sumo getting the 98 yards, and then Wilcox going 9 of 43. Let me just say this. I am not concerned about Georgia's defense as well as they played. I'm just going to make a very small mental note that happened. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm just going to keep it in the back of my brain that, Georgia defensively is there. If there was one weakness that we saw from them this past week, it would be that, look, Kentucky was able to line it up and run at you to some extent. It's not like it was very overly successful, but it was successful enough that you start questioning, hey, if there is a situation where you face Tennessee, hey, if there is a situation like you mentioned, you face Bama, there's going to be a situation in 2 weeks. I know that you have a bye week. You can get really healthy here. If I'm not mistaken, they don't play until they have to play against Texas. But, I mean, look, there's a lot of things that I think that they got to clean up. And I think that's why Kirby lost his marbles.
Wait, no. So they
don't play until the 28th, correct?
Against Bama.
Oh, they
Bama's
got
the next year.
Yeah,
Texas is the 19th of October.
Okay, I got that mixed up. I apologize.
But this is an insane stretch that they're going to deal with
going into Bama though, which is going to be critical. Yeah,
but they have Texas, Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and then the very daunting UMass. They have a very daunting matchup with UMass, so that's one thing to watch out
here
for.
They start getting into their tougher stretch. Those are some things that they got to clean up. Let me just say this, and I want to make this very much well known. At this exact moment, through week 3 of college football, I still think they're the best team in the country. I'm going to let that continue to be known. I'm not backing off of Georgia. Let me ask you this. Joe, I know that interception, the ball hit the ground, but man, that's the part that I'm trying to make. Like if that interception, if that ball doesn't hit the ground and Lovett is able to contain it, or he doesn't knock it up in the air and that ball's a pick six, my goodness gracious.
I mean, that's a lot of coulda. Again, I don't like doing the coulda, shoulda.
Well,
because that was obviously incomplete. He slammed the ball into the ground, and that was why it flew up into the air. Like
slammed the ball into the ground.
But it bounced. It bounced because he carried it into the ground, and then it shot up into the air.
If it didn't go up in the air, would they have given him a catch? Here's my question.
Well, if it didn't go up in the air, he would have caught it. This is why this.
No. What I'm saying is, if he would have possessed the ball, and the ball doesn't get knocked up in the air,
well, then it would have been a fumble.
Off of the ball even hitting the ground, would they have given him a catch? Yes or no? Now, the replay...
I just think it's such a weird contingency.
The replay official said that they would have awarded him the catch because if you have control and the ball hits the ground, then it's still considered a catch. All I would say in here is if you would have given him a catch, just because he knocks it up in the air doesn't make it incomplete either. Just throwing that out.
Well, it's not a matter because he knocked it up in the air. It's because the ball hit the ground, and because it hit the ground, it bounced up.
I think you're misunderstanding, or I'm not explaining.
I mean, I just don't think it's relevant to the outcome of the game. To be honest.
Well, they would have been tied.
But
actually, it doesn't. Kentucky would have taken the lead, so it's not irrelevant.
It doesn't matter though because it was an incompletion.
No, you just don't want to give Kentucky anything. That's all. That's all.
Not true. Okay.
Speaking of Kentucky, they haven't scored an offensive touchdown the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, they got a problem. I mean, they were up for that game, but they might be bottom like 4 SEC team this year.
Joe, they can't score.
I mean, it's pathetic. I mean, this is the only way to put it. It's pathetic.
I thought Vandegrift played his ass off. If we're gonna put anything into Texas, I'm gonna say this: Vandegrift played his ass off. I know Kentucky fans don't want to hear that. Look, he goes 14 to 27, 114. He does have 26 technical rushing yards. Look, there were some bad things that happened. He had some passes batted down on the line of scrimmage. But Joe, if I'm Brock Vandegrift, I'm walking out of that game with my head held high because I thought he did everything humanly possible based off everything that surrounded him and play calling. I thought Vandegrift did pretty well.
Yeah, for the circumstance, I thought the whole team, stepped up to the occasion.
Joe, they got to find a passing game.
I don't know if there's one to be found. I don't think Vandegrift's a very good passer.
Well, then let me say this: the kid that's behind him, forgive me for forgetting his name, but he's a true dual threat. If you can't throw the football,
Wimset.
Then all right, well, Wimset. It might be time to go full Lynn Bolden with him and start running football. Mm-hmm. If that's how you're going to do it, It might be time to start or going to a 2-quarterback system, even though I think Vandegrift played well. Or here's another thing. Do it with Vandegrift. I mean, Joe, you're 27 passing attempts when you're running the football. Joe, think about it like this. Think about it. They threw the ball 27 times in this game. Actually, more because you have 13 rushing attempts with Vandegrift, and he scrambled, we know for a fact, on 8 of them. My point is that when you're having success running the football, why aren't you running the football?
Can I be honest with you a quick second?
You don't.
We're spending too much time on Kentucky, man. They're going to be bad this year. we got a lot of other teams we got to get to. We're at 50 minutes.
Well, we're breaking down games. I mean, we've only been in this for 15.
Well, we need to talk about like Florida and Florida State. Like, in all seriousness, I'm not trying to like poo-poo the conversation, but like Kentucky's
you don't want to do a 2-hour show, and that's fine. I'm here to talk about.
No, I'll do it. I'll do a 2-hour show, but like if we're gonna do 2 hours, I want to get to Notre Dame. I want to get to Kansas State. Not talking about Kentucky, who stinks. This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training is expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code RuffinoJoe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.